Hey there. Hello, fellow drawers. My name is Valerie. I am a self-taught digital artist. Today, I decided to make a little hand tutorial for you. I want to make a series of different tutorials, like a head tutorial, hair tutorial, anatomy tutorial. So stay tuned for that. But today, let's talk about hands. I personally love drawing hands. I think that is the most aesthetic body part ever. I mean, the amount of ways you can pose those things, infinite. It's so fun. There is just so much you can do, and a beautiful hand or a pair of such can give your drawing like a billion extra bonus points. And it is also annoying when your drawing looks so good, but one ugly grabber just ruins the whole picture. We've all been there, so let me help you. Okay, so let's take a look at the shapes we have in our hands. First, there is this bell shape, or more of like a tooth shape, I would say, representing the palm of our hand without the big finger. No matter whose hand that is, it will always be a bell shape. It can be longer and like slimmer if you want to give your character some skinny Slenderman hands, or it can be shorter and a little wider if you are drawing like El Primo and you need those grippers to be like really chubby and chunky and sorry. So I always start my drawing with this tooth shape of the right size for my character. Then we remember that our hands are not made of paper and they are three-dimensional, so they have some volume to them. Then a 3D shape that we need will look something like this. This is the palm of our hand. So no matter what pose you want to draw your hand in, you should always start with this 3D shape. So now let's get to our little fingers. This front plane of our palm is where our fingers grow from. A common mistake baby artists make is drawing fingers growing right beside each other. That does not look right. Our fingers have space between them, some skin. That's why we are able to spread them out. So there will never be this sharp V-shaped angle between two fingers. It will be smoother, rounder, more of a U shape. So our fingers are made of three parts. I'm talking about these four fingers right now, and I will talk about the big finger separately. First, a little tip about the hand proportions. The longest finger should never be longer than the palm, so the middle finger should be about the same length as the palm of the hand. Our fingers are made of three-dimensional shapes. 1, 2, 3. The first two are basically the same shape, except the middle part is a bit smaller than the bottom one. They have this rounder, plumper, softer bottom part and a flatter top. The more you bend your finger, the more noticeable it is. The bottom part gets rounder and the top part gets flatter. But when I'm sketching, I usually just add these four cylinder stump shapes. Now, you've probably seen that the middle part and the tip part of the finger are often combined to simplify the hand drawing process. A lot of people do it, I've done that a lot. I think it's okay to do that, it doesn't look bad, especially if you have a more simplified style. While you're not very confident in drawing hands and just practicing, then simplifying the fingers like that can definitely make it a little less intimidating. And later, when you get some practice and get used to those shapes and drawing them in different angles, then you can start adding the second joint to your finger. Or is it the third one? 1, 2, 3. Or 1, 2. I don't know. When you're bending the finger, don't do this. Don't bend it like it's a gummy worm. Don't be afraid of sharp angles. There is a sharp angle because there is a fold. See, we have wrinkles here. Now, the shape of the tip of the finger is kind of similar to the two other shapes, except it has a tip, so it narrows down like this. The length of these two shapes will be about the same as the length of this shape from the joint to the knuckle. Not from the joint to the palm, but from the joint to the knuckle. See? I usually prefer to draw the tips of the fingers kind of pointing upwards. I don't know, I feel like that sometimes gives the hand a little more dynamic. Of course, fingers don't normally do that in real life. They are actually more likely pointing downwards if the finger is relaxed, but I like it that way. The nails are also tooth-shaped. When I'm talking tooth-shaped, I mean the front tooth. I used to draw nails very wide, like trying to almost fully fill the entire surface of the finger, which I mean can be pretty realistic. There are so many finger shapes and nail shapes. Some people have wide nails, some have narrow nails. So it's not necessarily a mistake, but when I wanted to make my hands look a little more elegant and aesthetic, those wide ass nails really ruined the look. So now I'm drawing nails a little slimmer, leaving some finger meat on the sides. And of course, the way you bend your fingers depends on the pose. There are some that do not require you to bend them in two places. There are some that do. I personally only recently got really comfortable bending the second joint. It took me a while. Now let's try to figure out where to put our big finger, and then we will combine everything. So see, the tooth shape is our palm without the big finger. If we just tuck our big finger like this is the tooth shape. I'm sorry, my nails are really ugly. Like, I hate my nails. They always chip and break like every day. The big finger also consists of three shapes. The first one being this triangle, or I want to say like a volcano shape. This big pad that is connecting the finger to the palm. This shape will change depending on how far you spread out your finger, because we have a lot of skin tissue here. Then the middle part is kind of the same as these shapes right here, and this bone, this joint, is often wider, so the tip goes kind of like this. So if the palm is spread, then we will see this more of a square shape, and if the big finger is bended, then we will see our tooth shape. And a tooth shape means that just like our teeth, this side is a little bit rounded, so our fingers do not sit in a totally straight line on the same level. There is a little arch, with the middle finger sitting higher, index and ring fingers sitting a bit lower, usually on the same level, and the pinky finger sitting the lowest. Okay, so now let's actually try drawing some hands. Whenever I need to draw a hand in a pose that I've never drawn before, I always use a reference. A reference being my own hand. I just take a selfie of my own hand in a pose that I need, and it works perfectly. But today I have gathered some hand references from Pinterest, so let's try drawing those. So I chose these 4 poses. I feel like those are the most common angles that people tend to draw. I don't know, I feel like that's a pretty balanced reference choice. So let's start with this one. Hand of an emo boy going like shut up. So you can see here I started with a tooth shape, then I added this volcano shape for the big finger, then I add these stumps for the bottom parts of the fingers. You can see I really mark where one part ends and the other one begins. When you're sketching, keep in mind that a finger is made of little cylinders, so if you need to put a finger into perspective, you need to think about how these cylinders would shorten in perspective. Okay, now let's draw this hand. It's more elegant, more of a simple pose, I would say. So again, a tooth shape, then these 4 little stomps, then a volcano shape, but here it's not really a volcano shape because the finger is it's tucked in a bit. So you see in the reference, the tip of the finger was not bending upwards, but I drew it that way because I like that. Also added some long nails. Now this next one, I would say is a little more advanced. Like a year or 2 ago, I would be terrified of this pose. Like, it's kind of in perspective, but it's kind of hard to figure out where the palm goes and what it looks like, because it's kind of hidden behind the fingers and it's also in a perspective. So here's something I think worth mentioning, is just how prominent our knuckles are when we look at our hand from this angle. You should really emphasize those bumps when you're drawing a hand from this angle. A common mistake people make is they think that the fingers begin from the knuckles, and they start drawing these lines separating the fingers starting from the knuckle. But that's not the case. Like, you can see these like finger lines, they begin pretty far from the knuckle. And this last pose is probably the final boss of all hand poses that I myself cannot say that I'm extremely confident in drawing hands from this angle. The hand in a perspective with the fingers pointing at the viewer. That is like crazy. Whenever I try to draw this, I would always end up with something that did not even look like a hand. Like, it didn't look human. But let's try this. So again, I'm starting with our tooth shape, our 3D tooth shape, this one. Oh, and I did the same thing with the previous pose. I also started with this tooth shape. See, it's right here. And here, it's the same thing, but we just put this tooth shape in a different perspective. So we see this front plane more, and the tooth gets narrower towards the bottom and obviously shortens. So then I drew the pad for a big finger to kind of get this shape right, and then I started drawing these stumps also in a perspective, remembering that those are cylinders. And then whenever you're drawing a hand in this perspective with the fingertips pointing at the camera, the fingertips will always kind of look like little beans, you know? See, they look like little beans. With some poses, it is easier to start with drawing the little beans and then trying to connect those beans to the palm. Sometimes that's easier, and some struggles later, there it is. It's not as bad as I expected. I think the pinky finger should be a little bit further to the right, but it looks good. Now the thing I want you to notice is that our hands and fingers are wavy. You know what I mean? Let's look at this big finger right here. This is where our palm starts. We have this bump, then it goes inwards, then a bump again, then inwards, then a bump, then inwards, and then up to the tip. See? And that's the case with every finger because our fingers have joints, so these joints are the bumps. So when I'm drawing the fingers, they don't normally have any straight lines in them. And it's the same thing from the inside of the finger. We have these soft pads, so it goes rounded and then inwards, rounded and then inward. The lines in our fingers and hands are really dynamic because we have these soft spots, we have wrinkles, we have joints, and for me, it is a lot of fun to draw hands because of that. And also the wrist. Our arms do not keep getting narrower towards the wrist. Our arms do get narrower, but then they get wider towards the wrist because we have these joints. They are really prominent, especially the joint from the pinky finger side. So the wrists are wider than the part of the arm before the wrist because of those bones. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. Just try observing your hands. Spend some time looking at them. Observe the small wrinkles and how and why they appear. See what happens when you bend your fingers in different ways. You have a perfect reference with you at all time. I have so many hand selfies. I have more hand selfies than actual selfies. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. If you did, then press like, subscribe. You can check out my art on Instagram, Kara, or here on YouTube Shorts. If you have any ideas for tutorials or other type of videos you want me to make, then feel free to leave them in the comments. And good night, good day, goodbye. You have something to say? I thought so. No. No, you don't? Oh my god.